Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, so if I do have any internet problems or something, you can just stop me. Okay. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. As government, especially as the Republicans, we want to denounce QAnon. A few framings. One, we as Republicans exactly want to clean our party and name because we think, yeah, sure, Donald Trump has brought significant support towards the Republican Party, namely the QAnon, which is a far-right conspiracy born out of the internet forums. But we think these kind of new voters and supporters that he lent in are destructive for two reasons. One, this QAnon is extremely right-wing voters, which will be counterproductive to the whole US democracy in the end, and also the Republican itself. But B, because of the controversy made by the new extreme right, exactly, the Republican Party has lost lots of rational, centrist, right-wing Republicans and the gray area people that could have potentially voted right because but they didn't because our party are seen as extremists due to QAnon. The fact that January 6th Capitol riot is propagated by this QAnon, it has invoked fear within Americans, it has tainted the image of Republicans itself. In opposition, exactly, they're going to be okay with all of the problems as they do not denounce or want to like stop, and they still want to attach themselves to QAnon. What is the mechanism of denouncing, right? One, we're going to utilize powerful and famous Republicans like Mitch McConnell to make a public announcement through their platforms, whether we publicly and outright shame QAnon in itself. We don't want anything to do with this conspiracy. Two, we will continue to support the US government efforts to prosecute QAnon within the January 6th Capitol riot. A little bit of funding towards the US government in itself. Our goal, A, we want to clean the image of Republican Party, and B, we want to garner more political power, right? Due to the big loss because of Donald Trump's voters in itself. So let's go into my first argument, right? Let's talk about the justifications as to why it's okay to denounce QAnon. Firstly, let's talk about the interest of the Republicans. Essentially, it is a political party. What does a political party want, right? Three reasons. One, they want their identity to be established and known within society. B, they want followers to increase their chance of winning elections in the future. And C, they want power within the US government, right? Whether it be to govern the people of the US. But what is the context right now? Exactly, QAnon is rising. It is a far-right conspiracy that has done harm to Americans and the US democracy as a whole. It propagated the January 6th Capitol riot, something that built fear in the people after the announcement from the elections took place. Why has this become a backlashing thing with the Republican Party? Two things. One, identity, and second, the impact from such QAnon. First, let's talk about the identity. The essence of the Republican Party, they are formed to go against Democrats that want pro-government intervention. For example, government that is overly controlling in the economic field, for example, tax breaks, or like the Democrats exactly want people to stop carrying arms and such. It is not because of the Satan worshipping pedophiles that the QAnon actually thinks about. It is the Republicans want to go against the Democrats due to the economic reasons, for example. The fact that like significant number of people agree with the Republican ideology before QAnon took place, they have like funded this root ideology of Republicans. Exactly, they should be the ones that are preserved because they became like generational voters like due to their parents, and because of that they voted for Republicans in itself. We think the outcome as if they do not denounce and they allow this new identity of QAnon, which is where they see the government as Satan worshipping pedophiles and such, right? It is prone for the Republican Party to be fractured. Why is this likely? Because the old generation or the centrist right Republicans will feel as if the QAnon are not part of their political party and vice versa. We think it triggers like lots of arguments against each other about the correct ideology of Republican. We think this condition has even weakened the Republican Party itself, resulting into lesser funding as a portion of centrist right Republicans want to opt out from the party as they feel as if it doesn't represent their ideology anymore. In fact, we think funding is that important for this party to gain more voter base and still become relevant within more elections. Because of that, we need to denounce. Second, what is the impact of it, right? Since they have like huge loss due to QAnon, it resulted into a few harms. One, it has decreased people's trust in gray area. Why should they support a party that is prone to controversy and conspiracy like QAnon, right? But secondly, the controversy in media is overpowering other other good policies or good reputations that Republican has. But the fact that the controversy of QAnon becomes widespread, it is blown up by media, right? It brings negative press to the Republicans and puts and like paints Republicans as far right. The effect on that is exactly bad, because no society wants to trust Republicans anymore. That is exactly going to be worse. Opposition loses all of their voter base. But okay, what happens in government side of the house? One, in government, people will distinguish QAnon and the Republicans, right? So people can see the true values of Republicanism, so you can gain more voters that trust. This is true. This can happen, right? Because when you denounce them, you are essentially like segregating QAnon from Republicanism itself. This is where people will see the difference, and they will like tap into more of the real Republican ideology. Second, it increases the reputation. It is beneficial because in politics, you make people want to vote your political party. You want people to donate to your campaigns. You want to get good reputation within the political party. That is where it's still going to be like so much beneficial, and we are still sticking to our old identity of the Republican, which is not like far right like what QAnon wants. Second argument, what happens if, that concludes my first argument. Second argument, what happens if we like do denounce, right? First, we think that we are like going to have more gray area that can come and vote for our party. Notice that most gray areas are people that are confused to pick which ideology that they want to represent within elections. That's why gray area mostly pick Democrats in 2020, because they put image of the ideology or political party first into deciding who they want to vote, right? But we think we can clean that image, right? It is likely because the fact that even powerful stakeholders will go against QAnon under government shows that Republicans really do not want anything to do with this. This condition sets a precedent that the Republicans want these QAnon to go away. It is better when we that is the feasibility. Therefore, when we exactly clean that image, then they're exactly going to not be easily swayed by Democrats. That is better because Republicans can tap into these gray area without into these gray area, and gray area can still pick these Republicans without thinking that they're voting for something far right. But okay, even if we still have some like leftover bad image of QAnon, we think there's going to be more discussions that's still happening under government, right? Especially after the Republicans party explain their reasons as to why they denounce QAnon in itself. When that happens, right, we can still explain to them that is where the good discussions are going to happen, especially when it is redirected towards Republicans' policies. Besides that, we think the sustainability of the party is going to be there. Notice that they can sustain if they can maintain good reputation, and that is still going to be likely under government. But okay, opposition may say QAnon is going to retaliate against the Republicans. One, no, if we stop funding and supporting them, they're going to be weak by nature, right? Because we think that more people will realize what kind of movement this QAnon really is and why they're part of it. That is why, especially when there's no funding that's going into QAnon anymore, that's how they're going to opt out of QAnon. So, but secondly, even if they do retaliate, right? Obviously, Republicans are a huge political party. We still have fundings, and we will have more fundings by having more centrist right-wingers. That is where we can beat this QAnon if they do try to hurt Republicans in the end, we propose.
Thank you so much for the speech, Prime Minister, to open the case of opposition, the first negative order of up. The floor is yours. Here.
Okay, before I begin my speech, can I grab a glass of water? I have a pretty sore throat.
Yeah, sure. Hi, are you back?
Yep, just came back. Okay, let me set up my timer. Oh, wait, okay. Anyway, actually, no. There's a timer right here. Okay. Okay, then my name is Sean. My preferred pronouns are he, him. Before I begin this debate, please to understand that whatever I say is by no means I mean to like offend anyone with like any political beliefs or political ideology. It's purely for the sake of this debate. And if I were to offend or harm anyone, I truly apologize, for it is not the intention. Okay. Starting my speech in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. The biggest mistake in the government side of the House in this debate is by not analyzing Republicans, its policies, and its political beliefs. They're going into this debate with a very, at worst, democratic viewpoint and at best, a centrist viewpoint. They've been saying that, oh, we have had a bad name, and these are our bad things, we've done bad things under Trump, we have bad things, and we have to fix it, we have to fix it. By who? Who are saying that these things are bad? Who are saying that Republican policies are bad, Republican viewpoints are bad? The ones that are telling this are being plastering this image of Republicans being something that is bad has been done by Democrats or its very left-leaning medias and very left-leaning news outlets. These are the ones that have been simply stamping all these bad image and bad narrative that Republicans are like calling Republicans names, etc. They have not analyzed exactly what a Republican would want and how a Republican's core beliefs are. And that is something that we in the opposition side of the House would like to define. Now, first of all, under opposition side, there are several things that needs to be defined and analyzed, such as Republican and its interests. Now, let's analyze the Republican and like the political belief. We believe that under opposition, there are several key features in like being a Republican that ties directly into how we should treat QAnon. And one of the most key features is that in Republican is that one, freedom, whether it be freedom of speech, to bear arms, to have an opinion, etc. It is something that Republicans, predominantly in America, all have. Pretty much most Republicans share this very much belief, share very much core value, the sense of freedom. This is very much, you can clearly see this in like how they really uphold like the Fifth Amendment. The secondly is this trust towards people of the opposite party or like of the left-leaning and like democratic viewpoints. So how so? In terms of politics, especially in the eye of Republican, they're much well known to be conservatives, meaning that they aren't the most open to change. This is evident as we look at gun laws in several states in the US. Republicans want to keep the Fifth Amendment in play and have the freedom to say what they want, do what they want. And for the distrust of people of the opposite party, which we all know, like unfortunately are the Democrats, how is this the case? This happens because of the unfortunately very toxic relationship between these two parties, where names and stereotypes are being thrown back and forth between people of the two parties. Not simply because of that, but due to what has happened in like the Trump administration, where Trump and many Republican politicians have called left-leaning media as fake news or news that are very biased towards the left. As a Republican, we would share this very same view as the people and the party that we support have been pushing this narrative forward. Now, so we've proven to you early on that as a Republican, you would have great distrust towards left-leaning media, as well proven to you that one of the key features of Republican belief is the right to freedom. Therefore, our stance in this debate is very clear. As a Republican, we will not denounce QAnon as we believe in freedom, whether it be freedom of speech, to bear arms, and to have an opinion, which these conspiracy theorists in QAnon have the rights to do. Now, in this debate, we will have two arguments. The first argument is that the denunciation of QAnon violates one of the key features present in the political beliefs of a Republican, which is the essence of freedom. Now, two, Republicans are biased towards right-leaning news and information, meaning that it is unlikely due to their core beliefs and bias to want to denounce QAnon. And even if it were to be denounced, there will be massive backlash from Republicans all around the United States of America. Now let's move into our first argument. The denunciation of QAnon violates one of the key features present in the political beliefs of a Republican, which is the essence of freedom. Essence of freedom. So what exactly do we mean by the essence of freedom? Okay, the easiest example, as we have known so far, is the essence to bear arms, to the essence to have guns, to buy guns. These are things that have been constantly being debated about in the US regarding the left and right policies. And so far, it has been something that is very much strongly supported and strongly being upheld by Republican parties that they want to commit to gun laws. It's also been very much strongly upheld by Republican parties to be able to freedom of speech, the freedom to have an opinion. That is pretty much and why is this case? Because as Republicans, the core beliefs that we want to upheld in the United States of America is that it is the line of the free in terms of like, of course, chances, free of like what to do and what to say. It is the line of the free. And in order to make that happen, we as a Republican want to upheld like the essence of freedom. Now, the denunciation of QAnon violates this because regardless if what they are saying are true or not, QAnon are a group of conspiracy theorists, and they have the right to have an opinion on things. They have the right to say their opinion and say what they feel, whether it be like something that is perhaps not in line with what the government is, and perhaps not in line with any political party. It is still their fundamental right to be able to say to still be able to have their own opinion and have their own viewpoints and how they view society and how they view certain political parties. By simply stripping this off of QAnon and denouncing them because of their viewpoints and the way they view things, we are violating one of the key essence and key features of Republican belief and essence that Republicans are trying to uphold, which is the essence of freedom, whether it be the freedom to believe anything that you want, essentially. So yeah, what the government comparatively what the government is trying to do is to simply like, oh, because they've put a bad name, it's just ban them, like, denounce them, actually, just throw them away. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're not paying attention anything to the fundamental rights of their fundamental rights, their sense of freedom, and the core beliefs that Republican would have in order to like viewing these things. Now, moving to my second argument, Republicans are biased towards right-leaning news and information, meaning that it is unlikely that due to their core beliefs and bias to want to denounce QAnon, and even if it were to be denounced, there will be massive backlash. So this argument is an argument of feasibility of how we believe that it is very much unlikely for Republicans to denounce QAnon as one. Even though QAnon are, of course, we concede the fact that QAnon might be have like extreme views in comparison to like the average Republican. Their views are still very much on most cases very much aligned with Republicans. And with how we've explained in our first argument of what the core beliefs of freedom that Republicans have, it is very much unlikely for them to denounce QAnon and to ban them and to do whatever government is proposing us to do to QAnon. Because one, Republicans in general have a great distrust towards left-leaning media, meaning they will be more leaning towards right-leaning media, such as Fox News, for example. And when QAnon, regardless of its like viewpoints, or something that has like a generally right-leaning viewership and right-leaning readers who are due to their belief in like right-wing policies, they are most likely to be Republicans. And therefore, with that said, it is unlikely for them to have a great an even greater hatred and distrust towards QAnon in comparison to like left-leaning media. And even in their best case scenario, if QAnon were to be denounced, there will be massive backlash by Republicans. In the essence, as to because of like one, it is a sense that like people cannot because it proves to Republicans that people cannot have viewpoints that are against like the common norm, like the common norms are like because there will be like charges, and there will be like basically people will be saying that also because it's something that basically upholds like Republican viewpoints, Republican beliefs, or right-wing beliefs, it's deemed as something that is harmful, it's deemed as something that cannot go on. Therefore, we should actually ban them. This will create massive backlash, as it would basically be a massive signs of like, oh, they don't want us to uphold like right-wing beliefs. Instead, we should like just follow what most media have been telling about, which is very much left-leaning media. Therefore, we believe that by what we have explained in terms of like the core values of Republican, as well as the feasibility of denouncing QAnon. One, it is very much unlikely for this to happen, and if it were to happen, there will be massive backlash. And generally, the likeliness of this happening is very minimized, because it is against one of the core beliefs of like being a Republican, which is to uphold freedom, whether it be freedom to bear arms, to say anything, and etc. That is all from me. Very proud to oppose.
Thank you so much for your speech. The first negative to continue on the case of government, we call on the first government or affirmative, the second government affirmative. The floor is yours. Here.
Wait 1 second, let me set up my own timer in case I got disconnected. I know where to like continue and stuff, because I know where I was left in. Hold on. Okay. starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I hope I don't lose this debate because if I do, I'm so going to be embarrassed of myself of having taken class in actual US politics. So I hope I don't lose this debate because, yeah, it's my degree. Like, come on. All right. With that said, I think the main case from negative side is that they agree with freedom and opinion. They believe it is a very salient thing to preserve. We don't deny that. We believe that as a Republicans, it is within our interest to have maximum freedom for our voters because we essentially hate big government and overbearing, over controlling government. That's why we hate socialism and stuff because that justifies government intervention. But where we do say we hate freedom is the moment when we think that those freedom is counterproductive to our true political value, which is to garner more political power as a party so that we can pursue the interests of our voters, so we can get the chance to execute the policy that we think should be executed. We think the reason of existence of QAnon and how it's affiliated with our party has driven away significant gray voters, which is an important part of the US politics, because our party seems like we're this crazy, illegitimate party that supports dangerous people, that supports political riot, that supports unconstitutional act of not accepting the votes, but not proposing it to the court, but by literally going to the like congressional house and rating every political thing. We believe that those disassociation should be made and denouncement should be made because at that particular point in time, we don't say freedom is bad. We say freedom is bad to this particular actor because it is destructive against our main interest. With that said, I'm going to have to I guess four issues here. First, I'm going to talk about one simple thing. Why do we think it is okay to lose Trump? In all of my four issues, all response will be integrated there as well. First, why do we think it is okay to lose Trump, and why do we think that Trump is just not worth having overall? First, I think the prerequisite of negative can win the case, and of negative winning the case is the moment they can get Trump to be integrated again, because that's the only way for you to satisfy the interest of QAnon. That's how you're going to make the relationship of QAnon and Republican Party well. That's the prerequisite for you to be able to execute all of your benefits of satisfying the voters. In which case, opposition needs to satisfy the voter base of QAnon because you don't dissociate from them. Some reasons why allying again with Trump might be a dumb move. First, I think people hate Trump. Trump is an unreliable candidate. The idea is that because even like in the 2020 election, the idea that he has already lost the presidential election to Biden means to an extent that his power is already decreased. Sure, he still has his loyal voters, but the number of that particular voters is insignificant given how Trump still lost. Remember, this is democracy. You have to win as much vote as possible, or in that case, as much vote in like the whatever electoral system US has, which still, even then, even so, through that system, the extreme right-wing voters number accumulation that you have is not sufficient enough for you to win. That's why it's okay to get rid of Trump because he's politically not that powerful again anyway. But second, assuming Trump can win, why do we think that's still bad? First, I think it's a bad move, right? Because Trump is ingrained in so many legal trouble lawsuits because of his business. That means it imposed too burden on you as a Republican Party. First, I think because of that things, you need to waste a lot of your resources in Trump, assisting him to like get elected despite his bad image. But second, even if he can get elected, I don't think the power is going to be sufficient. It's going to be a one-term power, not something you want to like. It's like 4 years acceptance, like 4 years in office is too short of a time to execute all the policies that you want to make. Because like the way it's likely for Trump to even only have 1 year is because there's going to be a lot of multitasking. Because at one hand, you still have to allocate resource on trying to fix Trump lawsuit image, but at the same time, you also have to formulate a policy. But at the same time, you have like an extreme segregation that you exacerbate because now your right wing is extreme right wing, and therefore the only way for the left to retaliate and the way they see so as justified to retaliate is by being extreme left wing. I don't think because of that the power is going to be sustainable. But second reason is the reason why right now is the right momentum for you to be more neutral, to be less extremist by denouncing QAnon. Because note that the ideology of QAnon is right-wing extremism, even written on the on the context side. So we believe here's why associating with extreme right-wing is actually bad. First, I think what the US is looking for right now is an identity for political stability. That means they will only be pro-party that can maintain the sustainability of democracy. Why do we think that that's the right momentum to do right now? Because of two underlying contexts. First, the idea that the U.S. political context, U.S. voters like spectrum as a whole, has a trauma to conflict within their democracy. This is because when conflict of democracy arises, for example, when right-wing extremism like figures in place that justifies like traumas in place that justify the existence of QAnon. Therefore, the only way for Democrats to retaliate best to this extremism is to have their own left-wing extremism, like Antifa, for example. When these two extreme right-wing clash, the two extreme polar opposite spectrum clash, there's going to be a lot of conflict. You're going to have more conflict like Charlottesville riot, for example, when people are like the government has to impose states of emergency where people need to have curfews, they lose their freedom of movement, they have to shut down their business early, they feel so unsafe, they have to constantly hold gun and keep guards. This is so traumatic for people, which is why there's an urgency to elect leaders that are more like compromising in a sense, that are more centrist, so that they can avoid all of this political instability that comes from extreme division between two political parties. But second party is because right now the neutral figure, i.e. Biden, because the reason why Biden win is, let's be honest, because he's willing to be neutral, he's willing to be centrist. That's why even in his inauguration, he hired right-wing figure to show a gesture that he's pro-democracy and centrist, people like Pence and Bush. But the problem is he lose all his momentum because once he got elected, his policy is too socialist and too left-wing. Policies like Build Back Better Act require citizens to have extreme taxation, something that is too like left wing that betrays his notion of like centrism. The urgency and the reason why it's the right momentum is because the majority of spectrum voter basis is they're looking for this new pro-democracy and pro-centrism figure that could replace Joe Biden. I think if we clean our party image, like what everything, like all the mechanism that Mayda has explained, we can exactly fill this spot and leverage this particular momentum. But third reason, why do we think the framing of having to be like the capacity to be able to sway voters in gray area or voters in general is significantly that important in winning the next election and getting political power. Because in the US, there's a system called electoral voting. And the way you can win is that you can win in swing states because these are the states that often become tipping points. These are states like Georgia, Florida, and other states that I guess I don't really know the example. I'm sorry, but yeah, this is the tipping point that often determines who gets to be the president. It is important for you to sway this great people area that most likely has no political identity, but they are pragmatic. They just want their life to go on. But their life cannot go on the moment there is going to be a political distraction, the moment there's going to be constant protest and clash, which is why it's important to opt in for something like as pragmatic as being a centrist, because that way you get to pander to their simple pragmatic interest that is having a political stability as a prerequisite for them to be able to execute their life. But lastly, how do we get more stability in like the political party power by opting into centrism and like sustaining the voters? Therefore, first, I think we can do that because our policy is more prone to compromise. We're okay with compromising with like democracy in Congress. Therefore, there's less government shutdown, and we can cater to more people like policy making and stuff. And people will keep on voting for us because we are seen as a capable government that can like execute policy. For those reasons, we propose.
Thank you so much, the second affirmative, for the speech. To continue on the case of side opposition or negative, may we call the second negative. The floor is yours. Here.
I'm audible?
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. I will drink first. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that nowadays many people live in a different condition, both in a Republican country or in the centrist country. And here I have my 2 rebuttals, and I will clarify them. The first rebuttal is about when the government team, they believe that this kind of QAnon only satisfy voters. But here, we as the opposition team, we only focus on the centrists that lose the Republican voters itself. because it is simply a shift the political ideology itself. But in this case, when the government team, they believe that it's only satisfy the voters, they didn't realize about the voters is also belonging to the society, right? It is also the part of the society itself in the US country, and this society is the side that the government must be responsible to. And the second rebuttal is about the QAnon that believe as the extremism, and here the government team, they only focus on the extremism of the QAnon that could bring and harm the situation of the society that not will be believe in the government itself, and it also pursue or influence many people to believe in Donald Trump or something like that. And move to my argument, it is basically simply to explicitly rebuttal the government team argument. And my two rebuttals, my two arguments is about the point of view from the government side itself, and also from the society itself. The first from the government side. Okay, my first argument is that we know that the government team of the Republican country, they believe that this existence of QAnon, believe as the thing that triggered the unfairness in the government, in the society itself. Why? Because first, the government should not becoming a bad thing in the front of the society itself. So that is why the government silenced the society to all be keeping up of the badness of the government itself. And then this QAnon is believed as the criminalization or something like that, because it believed that this kind of conspiration, this kind of misinformation or something like that already influenced the society to not believe in and to not trust in the government itself. And if do so, the government, when the government denounced this kind of QAnon, it means that the government only criminalized in a sense of the freedom of speech of the society itself, that already explained by my first speaker. And if the government believe that thing becoming real, they are sadly mistaken for several reasons. First, we know that U.S. Society, they are already well educated compared to other Republican country, and they are in a superpower country itself, and the society there, they already know the right and the false information. That they are also open to any education, because because the society in the United States, in the status quo, they are very studious. They are really happy to know something, to get a new thing or something like that. And that is why this characterization of the U.S. Society, that is a very critical in a sense to know whether the truth and whether whether the truth and the thing that not true. It is simply because the basic knowledge that the government should know as the Republican country is that the U.S. People, that characterization is already studious. They already know, they already capable to decide whether good and whether bad. And then the second thing is that as the Republican country, the government should know if the freedom of speech is really important at the time. And QAnon itself, it could be one of the examples with used by the Republican society to use their freedom rights. It is simply because actually many society can deliver anything that they have been taught, that anything that they feel or something like that in the terms of freedom of speech and freedom of will, either in a real life or social media. And the third thing is that if the Republican government denounce this kind of QAnon, it means that the government only be panicked and paranoid about the thing that exactly not becoming a serious cases in the society itself, because QAnon is absolutely just a popular far-straight conspiracy that is not real formal in the amounts of the society itself, and it is not becoming a serious problem for the society itself. Why it is not a serious problem? Because this conspiracy is not a bad thing. And if your interest is to get as much as power as possible to your party, how would you really rely on the people to go to your party, in a sense, when you're explicitly banning one of the key importance on the United States, that is a freedom of speech itself? And then absolutely this QAnon is only as a fun thing in the society itself, because in fact QAnon could make this conspiracy to implicitly criticize the government performance itself, and therefore this QAnon also helps the government to know what becomes the society interest, because they already know what's becoming a popular, what becoming interest in the society itself. And let's say if there is some conspiracy, if there is something QAnon that spread in the US society, if the government simply said it is wrong, the government can prove it. Prove if it is wrong, and they can act more responsible to the society itself. And then the second argument is about the point of view from the society itself, because the existence of government the existence of QAnon is exactly the approach from the society to show their dissatisfaction of towards the government performance. Why? Because we know that nowadays, even though in a small country, there are several society that not really believe in a government in general, and opponent that government is bad, because maybe there is a social contract, because we must be put attention to the government, and we already give our belief to them to rule this country or something like that. But this QAnon actually exactly from the society or really deliver the thing that become their interest. Let's say this QAnon is not a serious problem, because the need that the society want is that they didn't know what have been done by the society to turn back to the society itself. And this QAnon is explicitly show the government credibility in the sense of humanity and belonging in the popular way, and not in the formal way. And we believe that if the government denounce this thing, it just makes this government become hypocritical. It just upends the society as the society eyes if the government is unpredictable, and the government cannot accept any criticism by the society itself, and it makes the government look so arrogant itself, because they cannot accept any critics, any advice or suggestion or something like that come from the society itself. The society here, they only makes this QAnon only from the way of they show their freedom of speech and freedom of will, because they already studious and they already capable to know whether good, whether fact, and whether not. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the speech. Second of negative, to close the substantive case of side, affirmative, or government, we call on government whip. Floor is yours. Here.
Okay, just a minute, I'm going to drink. Okay. Before that, this is not my personal opinion or my own political belief. This is not true. This is just for the sake for education purpose. So, yeah, I'm going to start 3, 2, 1. It is funny when the dialogue comes to debate and saying that, oh, US society already critical and they can pinpoint which things that are right and which things that are wrong. This is a contradiction, one, because at the end of their speech, she also explained about why then people need some criticism for the government itself. But I'm going to rebut that later. But second, yes, indeed, like people maybe can pinpoint which right and wrong. But this is not the debate at all, because the debate talk about the perspective of Republican, not as incumbent government. It is two different actors. All their benefits should be linked back to the party interest itself. But this is where the negative falls, because negative never explained to you whether this is within the interest of Republican to maintaining those freedom, even if it is going to hurt my community, to maintaining like the QAnon itself, even if it's not going to be lucrative to my party. So you cannot believe on that benefit itself. But then they also bring me the analysis about whether it is unfair for you to criminalize those people. It is really not true, because they're going to we already see that in the past that in January 6th, there is a riot that exists because of QAnon itself. It's proved to you that they actually someone that are deserve it. This is where the this is where Republicans are trying to get rid from the perspective of becoming the people that are supporting KKK because they don't want to go through that. Three things in my speech. One, let's talking about the principal interest of the Republican. Second, talking about the freedom of speech and the image itself. And thirdly, talking about sustainability of the party. Number one, talking about the principle, whether it is just for you to denounce this and also get rid from those kind of issue. We have 2 points here. One, because there is a different ideology and purpose between Republican and also QAnon. Because not every Republican believe that this conspiracy are true. Not and Donald Trump, not a messiah, and like a lot of people are going to believe in that by default. You as a party need to prioritize your loyal member first because as a party, you have responsibility to protect your member. This is where when you're going to continuously associate with QAnon, it's going to decreasing your resources like money for political support and so on. But this is not bad because second, you're going to allowing the different perspective inside of your party because there are some people that are going to pro to the QAnon, there are some people that are going to against that. This is going to be really bad because this is going to make the party are going to fracture and there's no unity at all. Even if like the image isn't that bad, like because of you, maybe you have like some defense and so on. But like what LO said, but this is not just for you to support that because it's going to totally different with your own original policy. So let's talk about the freedom of speech because they kind of talking about why the freedom is something that are the main identity of the Republican. One, is it true though? Because they live in the past area. Looks like when oppositions live in the 1990s and so on. Because even when they care about the freedom, but Republicans trying to be a moderate status quo. For example, Republicans already tell Donald Trump to decreasing the far right tweet in their Twitter. Second, they also Republicans also don't want to associate again with the KKK because of its too extreme. And this proved to you that the world already kind of shifted into the moderation. So that's the Republican. So they should engage into like the more moderate scenario on that. Second, it's also going to be counterproductive because not within the interest of winning election in 2024 because this interest is more important because with reputations, you as a party are going to without reputations, you as a party are going to die slowly because freedom can be limited by the government, by the everyone if it's going to be hurt, it's going to be hurting the Republican as a whole. Thirdly, if your purpose is to find the freedom, I think that you don't need that much resources from Republican to begin with. So this is not Republican responsibility to help them at most to share their unpopular opinion, even when it's going to backlash into the party identity. So I'm not sure whether it is their responsibility to do so. So let's engage with their counterfactual. When they explain to us, but why then this is the good thing because we can criticize the government to look QAnon. Just look at the info slide. This clearly that what conspiracy does is to create awareness that this is a Satan worshipping pedophile, that Trump is a messiah and so on. But the content is not educational at all and not criticize the government at all costs because it's going to be a something point of view and it's also like factually not true maybe and so it's going to be misinformation. So I think that this is not a good way for you to criticize the government. But second, even if they do criticize through QAnon, but this is going to be a bad radical criticism because like this is similar with the KKK in the past that they can do immoral things. So I'm not sure whether the Republicans are going to having the only way for you to criticize the incumbent government is through this conspiracy stuff because maybe you can like do debate, maybe you can like do another research to calling out like the bad incumbent government did in the past or in the future or in the current moment, for example, in an educational way, in a research way. This is a lot of better rather than you just going to go into those kind of false misinformations and stuff. So the principle we want. Second, which case can repair the image of a Republican? They forget the fact that Republican reputation is decreasing in 2020 because one, too much controversy from QAnon when they overcloud the discussions, when people don't talk about the policy of Republican anymore, but they only gossiping the controversy itself. This is important. Second, Republicans are having a lot of distrust to the conspiracy theory that doesn't make sense at all. Most likely, this is the people that are living in the academia background that don't believe in that. Third of all, Democrats also also are going to use this QAnon as a weapon for you to speaking ill about Republican and easily swayed gray area to come into the democratic interest because we are more rational than them actually. So it's going to be really bad image for them. So they explained to us about why it is unlikely for you to denounce because there is a backlash. If I can prove to you that the backlash does not exist, their whole case are going to false. One, the amount of people that believe in QAnon is actually only 1% of Republican. This is not significant by number. Opposition need to defend a world why then those 10 people or 20 people can so influential by beginning. Second, the majority of Republican already pragmatic. They don't have they don't value freedom that much. If there is a big harm outside it, they don't value the freedom if those freedom are going to listen to the extremists and so on, because people originally hating become extremists and so on. But thirdly, even if there is a backlash, we already proved to you that we have more resources, not only in the Trump and not only from Republican, but also U.S. government as a whole can try to prosecute QAnon at the all costs. That is why it's going to lead to the political instability in the future. For example, that is why they have like more interest to join together to prosecute those kind of like people are going to spread hoaxes and so on. So we can win if they at worst retaliate to us. Let's talk about the image then. What they never answer is that why then, if society are going to hate Republican because they're complicit upon January 6th riot, that is why you're going to decreasing your followers. They never explain to you why then it's fine, why then the followers are going to still there. Second, the media are going to widespread glorify that in a newspaper, TV, radio, that's Republican now complicit upon this riot and so on. That is why the controversy are going to be really devastating for the party itself. It leads to like more distrust. It leads to like more people are going to switch into the blue state rather than red state and so on. So with that said, I think that the good image are going to be better off. This is exclusive benefit on the government. Third of all, talking about sustainability of the party itself. It is more fractured because now QAnon doesn't have more. It is not lucrative. It is not lucrative anymore because QAnon doesn't have like more voting bases. They don't have enough political support. But rather they're going to giving you more bad reputations. That is why people are going to distrust you, and it is fine for you to let go QAnon because we still have a lot of loyal followers from Republican that already progressive, that already in line with the society progressivity. I think it is more lucrative because those people are the one that are maybe are going to be the next politician that are aware to the everything, and then it is more safe by nature. So you should propose that.
Thank you so much, Government Whip or Third Affirmative, for their speech. To close off opposition substantive case, we call on the negative whip. The floor is yours. Here.
Hello, I'm audible.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, cool. I'm starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. If your interest is to get as much power as possible, as you has already said, which is also our interest as a part of the Republican Party, how would you rally people to go to your parties in a sense when you're explicitly banning one of the key importance on how United States is built, which is the value of understanding each other and the value of understanding that freedom of speech is also a massive value of our country. In a sense where what we are talking about is that QAnon, they already explained it very well in a sense where not a lot of people is actually very like in depth and very diving into the deepness of what QAnon truly is and really believing on what the QAnon cause is, which is okay. So the urgency in a sense where these QAnon people is like rioting and everywhere, it is also in our it's also in our defense mechanism, because in the Republican Party we do understand the importance of defense system. We do importance to understand about gun rights, etc. So why does it matter that some people believe some conspiracy from the internet that is factually untrue, has no proof whatsoever, and why we as government should like literally ban it from our parties? It is not like harming a lot of people by any means necessary. What is harming a lot of people is actually the other parties members that are using this QAnon. Panels, let me remind you, this QAnon is actually a weapon for this QAnon is deliberately being exploded by the other parties, and they are just like over exaggerating the point to shift the blame to our Republican Party. What the Republican Party should actually do, not not to ban QAnon is in a sense, but actually just straightening up the line and make it into a much more concise and much more structural, so that people understand that this QAnon isn't something that isn't something that is harmful in a sense. It isn't something that you should be taking that much of consideration. And if you're doing that in the Republican Party, we believe a lot of people will rally into our cause much more efficiently and in a much more abundance, because in a sense that we are a party that is much more straightforward. We are a party that values the importance of what America has been built on, and we are a party that would communicate and take actions in a sense where it won't severe any member of the parties. And if it's true that there is radicalism in the Republican Party, that is the radical people's problem. And unfortunately, even at the Democratic Party and Republican Party, there is bound to be radicalism. How can you make sure that if at the election the Democratic Party loses, how can you make sure that the Democratic Party wouldn't be furious in a sense? Of course, some of those supporters who have been putting their hard-earned money and sweat, tears, and cash to support several people who they think are the appropriate person to lead the country. How do you think that they won't be furious in a sense that the Republican Party members have been furious? Because like it is very recent, right? It is very easy to shift the blame to the Republican Party members who are actually doing this kind of right. But when they are doing that, some of their causes, like some of their concern, can be literally be heard, be listened, and be understood by the government in a sense. The government side of the house said that QAnon is an act of extremism and is bad for Republicans, but they on the other hand understand that QAnon is very, very little in number, almost little to 1% of the number of the Republicans. So why should we ban it? The urgency is like very, very confusing in a sense. If it's like only 1%, why should we ban it? There is like strict protocols that is a much more a better approach to limit some of the members who are participating in like riots and stuff, instead of just banning QAnon completely, because QAnon is like a fabric of social media, a fabric of online conspiracy, wherein in the internet, in the world of social media, people can say all of these things all the time. If you ban QAnon, the long term effect will fall in this place where a lot of people won't be able to say a lot of things in a sense. And that's what my first and my second speaker has been arguing. If we ban QAnon, a lot of people will be demanding that if a person said something, that a person have an idea that might seem outlandish from their point of view, they might say that, oh, if QAnon can be banned, why can't yours be banned? The controversy of the QAnons makes the Republican Party become very extreme. It's not true, because as you already stated before, that QAnon is very, very limited in number, the people who are supporting this cause. So the extremism isn't very extreme. Most of these people are still a part of Republicans. So you are not losing a lot of money. You are not losing a lot of supporters in a way. So it's better to just give them proper education instead of banning QAnon, or just like removing QAnon completely, or eradicating them in a sense. People from QAnon will not retaliate even if we close QAnon. Even if they retaliate, it won't be that. But that's actually what's gonna happen if you close this. A lot of people will question the visibility and the freedom of speech, which us as the Republican we extremely value. We really want the global independence. As Republicans, we really wanted a lot of sense of peace, from strength and everything. And then QAnon is a way for a person or a group of people to like sound their opinion. And what my second speaker has been saying is not that QAnon is like completely saying what the government is doing wrong all this time, but it's as like a metaphor. If the government, unfortunately for most of the time, the government hasn't been giving us the appropriate chance to speak as the Republicans, because they deem us like one of the a lot of our members are like they have been neglecting some of our members. So these members becomes very, very infuriated in a sense, where they create a narrative that is like very, very eye-catching, and then people could like listen to them in a sense, so you kind of understand where they are coming from. So in a sense, if you are creating a narrative so that people could see, so that people could understand, and people could give you a listen of your further cause without just looking at like the cover. Why is QAnon so bad, when QAnon can be like something for like people to understand in a sense where a deeper meaning and a deeper look on a sense of criticizing and trying to make things into better. Because like those riots, those people who are like crying in the streets, those people who are screaming and asking for revolution, etc., they are those people are not, you cannot just say that they are a part of the Ku Klux Klan or they are a part of several extremist group, but these people are the people who have like a certain idea of change, who wanted their sound to be heard, and unfortunately has been neglected. We as like Republicans doesn't want these people to be muted. We wanted these people to get the respect they deserve. And because we already value a lot of ideas of global independence, gun laws, etc., etc., it is not outlandish anymore for us as a part of Republican to say that it's okay, except if but we are just gonna mandate it properly. So if we wanted to be more powerful in doing this, people will see our party become more powerful and even rally a lot of people to our cause more, because we are actually becoming a government party who would mandate in a sense, who would mandate their members of the parties in a sense of much more broader and much more transparent way. So very, very happy to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech, op whip or negative whip. To close the entire case of side opposition, we go on the negative or the op reply. The floor is yours. You're here.
Okay, first of all, am I audible? Because it's raining at my place, so I hope that isn't really interrupting. Okay, perfectly audible. All right. Okay. Starting my speech in a few seconds. Okay. Okay, starting my speech in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will now be explaining. I think my whip, my third speaker, Whip Josh, which is a lovely guy by the way, has done really good job in explaining the classes and as to why certain arguments that have been brought by government side of the House do not fly, and why for the most part that we win this debate, opposition side of the House win this debate. So what exactly has the opposition side of the House done in this debate? Wow, jangan lebih deras. Okay, what opposition side of the House has done in this debate essentially is, one, we have done an analysis on regarding Republican views and how Republican beliefs early on in this debate. We have announced regarding like how they certain things they value more and certain things that predominantly like plays a massive part in like how they view things and how they make certain decisions. And with that analysis, we have questioned like the feasibility regarding of how likely it is for like this denouncement to happen against QAnon. QAnon, we have also introduced like several like possible drawbacks and negative effects that it could happen towards like the Republican Party in itself if this were like to proceed, and it will not be like it will not be handled very positively by members of the Republican Party and like people who have right-wing ideals in general. Our previous speakers have also mentioned several times of how like the government side of the House have been arguing several times about how QAnon is like damaging our reputation, and now our utmost priority is to like just now have like more centrist ideals and now be more get more votes from like everyone, etc. And we questioned this, and from like our previous speaker, we questioned this against like the likability and how I think this plays into part like how minimal their analysis of like Republican viewpoints and how Republican core beliefs are to even put this like something as a possibility that they could possibly even do. And in our previous speakers, we've mentioned several times about how Republicans think and Republicans really what kind of core values that Republicans upheld, and what the government of the House has been doing essentially in this whole debate is just not really taking that into account and just taking the fact, oh, yeah, it's gonna happen, it can happen, not really saying as to why Republicans will buy this idea that they're trying to propose, and will continue to like make things like these political the Republicans like political identity and political ideology more like left leaning or like center leaning in comparative to how things are at the moment. Therefore, with that sense of how we've explained, like I've done like an analysis on like Republicans and like regarding like the effects that this could have if we were to denounce QAnon, and we've also like explained like the core values and the unlikeliness of the denouncement to actually happen. We believe that opposition side of the House wins the debate. Thank you very much. That is all.
Thank you so much, Reply, for your speech. To close off this entire debate, we call on the Reply. The floor is yours. Here.
Okay, wait, let me drink some water so I don't choke. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. In Jakarta last year when I was in the airport, I met this guy named William Sean, who is essentially actually a right-wing American, and he fed me with a lot of materials about Republican that I thought would never come useful until today. So Sean, thank you. All right, with that, the reasons why we win. First, I'm going to talk about why we will not lose our other Republican voters, because this is their biggest backlash point. We think that this point, if we can prove this, we negate all of their idea of backlash, concern of losing voters from Republican, and in and of itself. My first speaker would like to say that she's very heartbroken. Almost the entirety of her speech was ignored. She's very disappointed because she felt like she's been completely dismissed from the debate. When she's clearly, my prime minister contextualized to you the original idea breakdown of why Republican Party was established. It was because there was a bunch of people that was pro-tax break. There were a bunch of people that are pro-personal freedom. Examples of this is that's why people, Republicans is pro like gun carry on arms law, I guess, because they want those freedoms. So we think those identities can still remain because those identities are separate and divorced from the identity that QAnon is trying to promote. That is, the government is entirely run evil like run by evil satanic cult, and can only be saved by the Messiah like Trump. We just eradicate that idea. The idea of tax break, personal freedom, core ideas of Republican will still exist. That's why we will still have figures like Reagan, Bush Senior and Junior supporting all of this. We have figures like Mitch McConnell, like Romney or Mike Pompeo that can still be a backup to all of these things. We don't see why like we will significantly lose a large chunk of voters, because the core idea of Republicans still remains. But the further proof that they need to answer, if they want to excuse the idea, like if negative wants to excuse the idea of freedom and how that flies, is they need to integrate then why mechanically QAnon's idea of conspiracy, Satan, deep state run government worship can be favored. It can be like in line with the Republican policy. Why, to an extent, it is these concerns are principally justified if they want their freedom of speech to fly, because we don't see any of that mechanization breakdown from them. They just third speaker just say, oh, the reasons are valid and they have been ignored. Yeah, but then why is Satan called something that shouldn't be ignored? Why is that concern that the government is a pedophilia ring should be something that is valid and therefore accepted and be integrated into the other stuff of like Republican concern? Second, class, the reason why we win is because we have been very generous. We've trained off extensively, especially by the second speaker, talking about the idea of even why the sentiment of right-wing extremism is going to be significantly decreased in Republican, and therefore we become a little bit more of like right-wing centrist, that's going to be okay. We've given several reasons. So many of them have left unanswered. Things like because Trump is a reliable figure to have because he lost in 2022, in 2020, I mean, because he has faced all of these lawsuits. Depending on him for preserving the identity of right-wing extremism in the Republican Party isn't reliable. But we've also contextualized to you extensively the idea like the urgency context of like swing voters, how they are important, but how they also want like rationalization and a government that is essentially like pro-democracy and kind of centrist to prevent exacerbation of extreme polarization conflict that could then result into things like Charlottesville riot, and like January 6th event that sure is initiated by a small number of people, that is QAnon, that yes, therefore it's kind of not urgent to eradicate QAnon because they're small, but their impact is significant because of how radical and how extremely right they are. There's this extensive context of trauma because of the instability provided. That's why we need to leverage on the idea of becoming actually centrist right, because that's what the US democracy needs right now, because that's the only way for us to get back our political standing. For all this matter, Bang William Sean, thank you. Propose.